So we are Strange Word Immersive, and we're here to talk today about when game and theater collide. We are a dedicated immersive theater company based out of Houston, Texas. And our very first production we mounted in February 2017, and we sell it as a hybrid. It is an escape room at the same time that it is immersive theater. We deliver both experiences when you come through our room. You may also know us through the blog immersology.com, where you'll often find me writing thought pieces, looking at the practice of immersive theater and the particular problems that we face. So do be sure to check out Immersology as well.
So come 2015, we got bit by the immersive theater bug, and we wanted to start an immersive theater company. The problem was that didn't exist in Houston. Nobody knew what it was. No one was looking for it. We despaired of finding any audience if we were to do such a thing. But around that time, we also discovered escape rooms. And we went to one or two, and we thought, hey, this is a lot of fun, but it's kind of missing something. I think maybe we can bring these two things together, and sort of the strengths of each genre can complement each other. So that's what we decided to do. If you don't know about escape rooms, look them up. We're not going to tell you what they are. You're experts here. If you don't know what immersive theater is, there's the door. But anyway, when we started, there were 3 escape rooms in Houston, so we thought at least there's someone going to those. Today, there's 30 companies in our city, and we believe over 2,300 nationwide.
Escape rooms are really a thing, guys.
That arm of immersive live entertainment has really grown. And what we did was we created a show called The Man from Beyond, Houdini Seance Escape Room. You can see Haley there is one of our cast. We won't go through our whole history, because that's not what we're here for. We're here to tell you things that we learned during this process. But I'll give you a little bit of background on the show. The Man from Beyond is the traditional 60 minutes of escape room gameplay on a clock, and it's also 52 minutes, fairly precisely, of theatrical content that's not on a clock. So you can take from 1.5 to 2 hours. Our teams average about 100 minutes with us.
The experience features 2 actors and a team of 4 to 8 people.
Yeah. So it's a small event, a fairly high ratio of cast to participants. The Man from Beyond is currently on hiatus because we're moving from our original sort of single room facility to a much larger one that'll house multiple games. I believe that our contractors are in there probably right now working on that. And that'll be coming back in a matter of weeks, single-digit weeks, probably low single digits. And after that, we'll be able to focus on installing a second experience and then a third, and then we'll see what we do from there.
A couple of quick disclaimers before we go any further. Number one, there are going to be spoilers in here because we really relish the details, so we apologize for anybody who plans to come see the show.
We're not going to tell you everything, but we're going to tell you enough to give you some real details on what we have done.
And I also apologize for all the photos of me in this slideshow. The second character is a secret. So I'm not an egomaniac, I swear. It's just the publicity photos that we had. So apologies for that. Since we are going to be going into kind of a little bit of the science of how we did this, we formed hypotheses, what were the results, how did the audience respond? But I think it's important that we look at the philosophy for our approach so you know that what we were wanting to accomplish as artists. We were interested in delivering a consistent narrative experience for every single person who came through our door. There are a lot of immersives out there that are just go out and chase the story, go find it. And we wanted to make sure that everybody, even if they saw different aspects of that narrative, had the same story experience across the board. We were also interested in the audience playing themselves. We believed in one magic if, which is that for some reason you really want to go to this Houdini seance. And beyond that, you got to just be yourself. And we think that led to more authentic experiences in general. And we also were interested in the experience being as realistic as possible. Obviously within the parameters of the game, but we weren't doing something that was heightened or metaphoric. It was as real to life as possible. So looking at the conflict here, we have the basic challenge is puzzles versus actors. Usually when you hear about an actor in an escape room, they just throw the actor in there with the puzzles, and it's just like complete chaos. There's no director. Are there even scenes? And like the players feel very pulled between, am I leaning into the character or am I paying attention to the puzzles? And we kind of had this theory that the puzzles were likely to win because the puzzles have to be solved, and we didn't want the actor to be ignored. So essentially the conflict, when you're looking at this, even though we thought these two genres would go really well together, they are at cross purposes. Because in an escape room, you're looking at the players fully in charge of their experience. They hold the reins the entire time. They say everything goes. And they did want to complete all the puzzles. People kind of tend to lose their minds in escape rooms. We kind of call it escape room brain or escape room blindness. Like you literally cannot see something in front of your face because you are just so hyped up. Maybe not the best setting for immersive theater.
Yeah, and so we formulated a theory that instead of mixing the two in the same time and space, we would hand off the reins between the two different modes. We would sort of, when the actors were in charge, they would lead the dance, and then they would leave, and the players would be in charge of the game. And this...
because like usually in immersive theater, the actors hold the reins, and
yeah.
the audience is part of the dance, but they follow.
Yeah, and so we decided we'd sort of switch modes, and this made sense to us since we had experienced both. We wanted to find out if this would make sense to people who had never done an escape room, never done immersive theater, never done either. And so that's one of the things that we're going to look at.
So looking at the hypotheses we're going to be examining today. Number one, we thought it was possible to achieve a 100% win rate. That's what we wanted from the get-go. If you don't know, escape rooms often like to brag about how low their win rate is. That's becoming less popular, thank you. But they're like 20 to 30% is pretty common. I played a room yesterday that was like 5%, and I'm, oh my God. That means your game is hard. It's impossible to win. But we were interested in a 100% win rate because we had a story to tell. And if you don't bring the characters to the conclusion that you know that they need so desperately, it's kind of tragic. So we wanted most people to complete the story. And also we had this like weird theory that people want to win. That it would be more fun and they would be more a fan of the company when they come out triumphant instead of cut short. We're also looking at our structure. We had our immersive theater scenes at bookends and bottlenecks. If we did that, we think it would help preserve player focus. You think of it kind of like a currency. I know the Nest guys like to talk about audience as a currency. You have to keep attention specifically at the far ends and then in between gameplay at very specific bottlenecks. We're really passionate about making sure that you don't feel self-conscious in an immersive theater experience, which is very, very easy because all of a sudden you're an actor. So we were interested in like seeing what we could do in the design to minimize that moment of you just being like under the spotlight and like nervous. Could we do that? We thought we could.
Yes, and it's also sort of part of the genre of the escape room is that you have to talk. Although that's an interesting experiment if you can't, we weren't running that particular one. So yeah. We couldn't have a rule that says, you know, when there's an actor talking, sit down, shut up, and listen. And we thought that if we just didn't say anything about that, people would be able to understand, that we would allow them to keep their voice. We're also a fairly tech-heavy experience. We designed in a lot of synchronized light and sound, audio and video. And we thought, you know, as long as we have these things for theatrical purposes, we can also use them for game purposes. And on both sides of the fence, we can focus attention using light and sound. And also, we have a one-on-one, and we approach this as just another one of our scenes. And we figured that that would be okay.
So go ahead and place your bets right now. These are the theories. And now we're going to dig into how they turned out. Did they work out or not? Was there audience pushback? 387 games later, we start with achieve a 100% win rate. So a little bit of context about our game. The game is not scaled back at all. Depending on how you count it, you're looking at around 16 puzzles or challenges, which is actually a little bit high for an escape room. So the challenge is not easy. We don't actually publish that we aimed for this in our design on our website, because of course then players are going to think, oh, well, this game must be super easy. It's well clued. There's a big difference. So that's a little bit about our context. How did we do? Did we get at that 100%? Not quite, but 98.4% ain't shabby. We think that's pretty darn close, but why did we fail? Why could we not get 100%? The simplest answer is this photo here is a maze box, and if you take 25 minutes to solve the maze box, which is literally the first puzzle, it's not gonna go well. That's just the way it works. Like, I can't clue you on a maze. Like, solve it backwards? Anyhow. So I think the reason why we really failed at this is because of our win-lose structure.
If you can lose, someone will.
Yeah, pretty much. So I've been thinking about, like, what is a structure of an experience that could achieve the 100%? Like, we just don't think that that is possible with this structure. We're thinking, like, maybe if you had a lower bar, a minimum completion metric, something that would make the game easier, essentially. And then if, people really blow through that, you can add bonus content, additional puzzles, different stuff that they unlock. That makes the bonus content, of course, less essential, and maybe you're then looking at, like, a point system or something like that. But if you have a really low bar, then you can probably get at 100%.
Yeah, you'd expect everyone to find the MacGuffin, which is just underneath the table, but everything else in the room is kind of optional, but still hopefully fun.
And it's also possible that you could have a situation where, like, the win and the lose both unlock different narratives that are equal. In our situation, they're not equal at all. And then you could also look at maybe dynamic difficulty scaling, a game that is more interactive. I know the Edison Room is doing this. We're actually planning on doing this in our second game, so that the game itself is able to respond to how the team is performing, make a puzzle harder, make it shorter, make it easier. And I think that that's going to be something that can take people across the line. So the major downside, of course, to this sort of structure is that we do have to rehearse a losing sequence. You got to write it, and everybody in your cast needs to know it, and it is guaranteed to be under-rehearsed, under-tested, everything like that. And it is rough, of course, whenever you get that, those people who can't make it across that line. It's just not quite the same fulfilling experience that we designed.
But how did we get to the 98.4% win rate? Our game was originally quite a lot harder than that. But the solution, of course, is iteration. We have the ability in an escape room, which is a continually running event, that we can watch it for a long time, make a change, and just keep going like that. And we feel that after about 6 months of watching every game ourselves and making changes, most of them fairly small, that we were really able to get it settled in and flowing the way that we wanted. We weren't having people hitting obstacles for too long, which is what we didn't want. This is not magic. Everyone iterates. But one of the things that we found that was really interesting was all we really had to do was make small changes. There's only one puzzle in our game from our original concept that we just completely cut because physically people weren't able to do it. It relied on a stereoscopic vision thing that a lot of people just couldn't do. So we cut that one out. But everything else we were just able to tweak to make it sufficiently accessible that most people would eventually get it. And if you didn't get it, we could provide you a hint. And we have a couple examples of this. To give you concrete stuff, the maze box, for example, this is a maze on top of a box. It's about yay big, and if you shake it, there's stuff in it, so it contains something. But we have a lot. After you work the maze, you get a key out, and there's a keyhole on the box. We had 14% of people needed a hint to put the key into the keyhole for the box. Because
that key goes anywhere else but on that box.
Well, they either didn't see it or they just like assumed that this key must go somewhere else other than the thing that you took it off of. which if you are trained in escape rooms, it kind of gives you brain damage, and you expect that sort of thing. So to get away from that, what I did was I bought a 10-cent little tiny brass knob, and I put it on the top of the maze, you know, where it opens, to provide the affordance that this is a box that you can open. Like, you could grab the lip of the thing and open it fine, but it didn't look like a box. So as soon as we added that little tiny thing that made it look like a box, people would try to open it. They're like, oh, it looks like it should open. Oh, there's the keyhole. So that dropped our hint rate from 14 to 4%. And now a hint means that you've been stuck on it for like 5 minutes. A hint is not a trivial thing. It means you literally have been stalled on this operation. So we think that getting that down to 4% is pretty good. Now, we can also sort of judge the age in the room. Who recognizes this sort of lock? That's actually pretty good. A lot of our audiences do not recognize this. This is a briefcase lock. And what you're supposed to do on a briefcase lock is dial the number and then slide that knob to the side. Everyone was poking it, because
it's a push button.
They're poking it.
Yeah.
And this is not supposed to be a major obstacle, but we were getting 6% hints on this. And we just thought that was unnecessarily frustrating. It was impeding the flow of the game. So we took it off, we engraved this little arrow on it, 0%.
Yeah.
Minor change, really smooth the game flow out. So the other thing that we do is we have free range hints. We try to keep it to a dull roar. We don't like to give more than about 5 per game.
We average around 2.
We average around 2 hints. And we try to space them out. But our game tells the players when we think they need a clue. Because we know what the pace is. We know that if you haven't opened the radio by 15 minutes, you're behind pace. And so we will say, it's time to take a hint if you so want. So we illuminate a little button. You can press that button to get a hint.
Oh, right.
Here's our hint machine. And so we have dynamically generated text in a video. And we also very carefully arrange the wording of all the hints and that sort of thing. But a good stable of hints, along with iteration to make sure that the clue trail is clear, we think has really been our key to achieving a high win rate, even in a fairly normal difficulty game. So even if you're not doing an escape room, you're just doing a game or who knows what else, what are the takeaways? Iteration, extremely important. Watch it, or have the people who watch it be empowered to suggest or make changes to make the thing work. We've seen lots of sort of partial fixes that people have done that conflict with the game because the people who are running it notice problems, but they're not really empowered to make full-scale changes. So they'll tape a little sign to it or something. You can make more integrated changes if the creators are empowered for that. And the other takeaway is just remember, almost everything you do is going to start too hard. This works for games, but it also includes storytelling, the relationships between characters, the names of people. You're living it, you know it, but the audiences coming in are going to be way out to sea. So things that you think are obvious are not going to be.
The metaphor we use is kind of thinking about Shakespeare. I think immersive theater kind of makes groundlings of all of us. You know, we're rough, we're ready, our focus is kind of everywhere. And Shakespeare knew that and would reiterate and reiterate and reiterate the important plot points. We feel like immersive theater should do the same thing. Moving on to my favorite personal topic is structure. Will the scenes at bookends and bottlenecks preserve focus? So a little bit of context on this one. We basically had the theory that cutscenes, like in video games, could function within the game, and that you would just do really strong intro and beginning, or intro and conclusion. So did this work out? Yes, we think it did. The best evidence that we have is that critics are often talking about our structure. They're really excited. They call it an immersive theater sandwich of like you've got this immersive theater bread, and in the middle is this game, you know, and you're just eating it, and it doesn't get too sloppy, you know.
But it's really kind of a layer cake, or some sort of multi-deck sandwich, because we insert scenes throughout the games, mostly at act transitions, you'll see, at important story points.
Yeah, so let's talk about, and we also know that this works because we have a moment in the game where we didn't bottleneck properly and it failed. And that's at the radio moment, which is this picture here. So looking at the bookends, so what I always think is missing in an escape room is Act 1 and Act 5. You're missing, in a traditional storytelling, the inciting incident, like that exciting thing that kind of spurs you to action. Quite often they're just telling you, something really cool has just happened, and now you gotta go do the thing. You know, and I'm just like, can I witness that cool thing happening? And then also in Act 5, where you're looking at, like, you just won. You know, it's not a satisfying conclusion to have a game master say, congratulations, you won. I want to see the impact of what I did as a player on the world. And that's where our actors really fill in, where that live person can truly contribute. Because if you consider your players the protagonist needs like an inciting incident to spur them to that action, and they need to see their impact on the world at the end. So that's basically how we do the bookends. Looking at bottlenecks. So a little bit of context. This is our puzzle flow. The story is essentially that the ghost of Houdini is getting stronger and stronger as puzzles are solved and challenges are met, so that he's able to communicate more with the room. We're kind of Shakespeareans, so it's a 5-act structure. Act 1, we have is pure immersive theater, and then we have Act 5 down here, which is pure immersive theater. All of these are labeled. This is an unlabeled puzzle flow. The stars are scenes. The circles are, the colored ones are starting points, like stuff that you discover initially. The black circles are like what you get from a puzzle that needs to go somewhere else. So that's like objects and results and things like that. The squares are puzzles themselves, green ones being fast ones, and red ones being the most challenging. Yeah, so looking at this, here up at the top, we have a film scene. So that is happening at a pretty tight bottleneck. It's actually following a really great magical sequence that brings the entire room together. Like, there's no other puzzle to be solved. Everybody's involved in this one puzzle. They're engaged with it. And then a scene happens, and everybody is there together. And then down here, we have a big meta puzzle that ends in Act 3. And that is, again, a bottleneck. There is nothing else for the players to do but do this one puzzle. They sense it, they know the room at this point, and then they get an incredible scene. And
you can see in Act 3, things really explode again. We hit the bottleneck, and then we expand out into the atmosphere again.
Yeah.
It's almost like going into a new room. We open up a lot more possibilities that you didn't even know were there before.
Absolutely. But as you can see, we've got a little isolated star here in Act 2, the radio scene. That's not at a bottleneck. There are some puzzles that kind of flow all together into that, but we've got these other 3 lines here, and players are usually on those paths. They can sense that they're onto something, they need to follow this. So when that radio is triggered and Houdini starts talking, they're like, oh, that's another puzzle, somebody else is working on that, I don't need to pay attention to it. But we did write the script with the intention that everybody would stop and listen to this radio.
There's callbacks in subsequent scenes to what happens in the radio. So if you listen to it, you get more out of the show. And so we want people to listen to it, but often they don't. Yeah,
and we've actually tried a few things to solve this. We've tried to isolate the radio in light. We were actually like short a dimmer pack, pretty much. So like we had some other light, like because we twofered it, so like some other things were like a little bit lit as well as the radio. In our next iteration, we're definitely going to be spending the money to get that extra isolated, only light on the radio, all the other lights out in the room. I still don't think it's going to work.
It'll improve it. We don't believe it'll make it super solid.
Yeah,
just because we've seen people playing in the dark. The lights go out and they just don't notice at all.
Yeah, but if you're at a bottleneck, then you know this is what I'm supposed to be doing right now. You know, everybody's together. But if you're literally in the middle of another puzzle, I gotta get this puzzle done. I don't care if it's dark. You know, you're gonna hold it up to the radio light to finish it instead. So here's a brief glance at our next game. Here's the puzzle flow. As you can see, the title for the next game is Lucidity. And it's a lot cleaner. We've gone way more aggressive in those bottlenecks. In fact, all of Act 4 is a long bottleneck because there's some really interesting storytelling going in there. So I kind of wanted to give you a glance of what that looks like now that we've learned even more how important this is.
Yeah, this is a much cleaner game design.
Yeah. So even if you're not doing a game, I think it's really important to think about your bookends and your bottlenecks. What are the moments, whether you're doing something, like what are your moments of best magic? What are the moments of story that you want to make sure that everybody gets? You know, you want to make sure, you know, Sleep No More, everybody catches the rave. Well, how do you do that? How do you create that kind of bottleneck to get as many people there participating in the coolest thing so that they don't miss it? So I think that's really important. Yeah, moving on. Next theory.
So next, we really wanted to try to explicitly design against self-consciousness. We feel that self-consciousness is the enemy. This is a bit of a takeaway from Meisner theory of acting, which is that if you're self-conscious, you're not in the moment, you're not going to get the best experience from it because you're wondering, you know, am I standing funny? And of course, I'm doing that to myself right now by talking about if I'm standing funny.
Nobody think about breathing.
Yeah. And so in Meisner, the actor faces that problem. In immersive theater, the audience faces that problem too. So how did we do? We're going to call that a mostly. We call that a mostly because the real point of failure is because it's a group activity. When you are with your friends, you know, or strangers even, and you're working as a team, you know that people are watching you. You might be concerned about appearing dumb by not figuring this thing out. And we actually know that escape games aren't really a test of brain power, they're more a test of observation. But you may be worried about your performance. You may be worried about feeling vulnerable, so you start cracking jokes. So this is sort of an inherent structural limitation in doing anything with, you know, a team activity. I'd really love to do solo escape rooms or put people in masks or something, but these are all things that are difficult to do.
Honestly, like sandboxes do it really well, or any kind of one-on-one when you break up your groups. You're going to get unlock a certain kind of behavior when you do that. If you're looking at a dark ride or an escape room where you're really keeping people together, you need to be aware that you're going to be fighting their self-consciousness.
Yeah, we find that when you separate people, they're more receptive, more pliable.
Yeah.
But where we did succeed, I think, in a lot of the conscious design things that we did. For one, this photo is what you see when you come in the door. Madame Daphne sitting at her table and she greets you. But even though we have an actor in the room, we don't engage in sort of people's idealized nightmare of interactive theater, which is they call someone up on the stage and make you do something. Lots of people are very worried about that. We're very careful to never put people on the spot. If you want to go talk to Madame Daphne, she's ready to talk to you, and you'll have a good time doing tarot readings and all sorts of things. But if you want to go sit on the couch in the corner, you can do that. And if nobody wants to talk to Madame Daphne, you can all just sort of, you know, sit around and listen to the music, and it's fine. That doesn't happen a lot, but it's possible. So we make sure that people get the feeling that they're not going to be pressured to be actors. They can just be themselves, whoever that is. The other really important thing is it's a game. And because it's a game, you have things to do. You have something on a timer, and it's important to do. This is the Meisner thing again.
Yeah, independent activity.
The independent activity, if you're familiar with that. And so while you're playing the game, hopefully you're focused on that, the escape room blindness, and not on yourself. You're focused outwards, taking in what's out there. And we kind of, we like to think that that sort of attention to the game translates into the scenes and vice versa. Another thing we do is to make a very clear threshold. As soon as you walk in the door, you're in the experience. We never mention the word escape room. We do everything sort of as part of the world so that you know what your expectations are at that time. We do that so that you don't sort of break out of the flow of the experience and have a chance to think, oh, I'm really doing here something very silly. We try to keep it all rolling from the moment you step in the door. So takeaways from this for projects sort of outside us: keep the audiences in the flow of the world. If you do anything to sort of let them sit and think about themselves and what they're doing, they probably will. And that'll sort of kick them out, and you have to work harder to bring them back in.
No problem keeping audience voice. So you guys are probably familiar, like in Sleep No More, they say, no talking, full stop. In Then She Fell, they say, only speak when spoken to. Given our structure, we didn't even, honestly, it never even occurred to me to have a rule about this sort of thing, because people do need to communicate in the game. But also just philosophically, I wanted things to be as realistic as possible. I wanted you to be you, and limiting any part of you, including your voice, we just didn't want to do. So we thought, Houston's an untried, like brand new immersive theater market. We expected audiences would be shy. And that there wouldn't be any problem with talkback. They would be able to take clues. Yeah, not so much, which is actually really great news. I mean, that means that people are even more eager for interaction than I anticipated. But here we have a photo from what we call Rules Hall. So you've had this great interaction, very free-flowing with Madame Daphne. She takes this gorgeous candelabra into a black room. That's the only light in there. There are curtains. It's just a candelabra, your team, this woman. Do you interrupt her while she's telling her ghost story? Do you interrupt her?
Yes.
So we learned pretty early on that we really needed to adjust and train our actors better for the kind of pushback that we were going to be getting. And this is where we thought that Meisner style really helped us. The more you appear as a human being, the more your character reads not as an actor, but as somebody who is really living this moment with you, you're gonna get respect. But if they can sense that you're kind of big, as we like to call it, being big, that you're performing, then they're going to start, making wise cracks and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, you don't heckle real people, or at least most people don't. But you might heckle someone that you think is an NPC or an automaton.
Right.
Being real, sometimes if people are giving me a hard time, I'll become even more vulnerable. And that usually works. That usually works very well.
And we decided pretty early on that response was something that we valued more than our script. It is a scripted piece, but we thought it was way more important for the actor to take a moment and to respond to the reality of what somebody just said or what somebody just did, to acknowledge it in one way, shape, or form. And usually you get like a little bit of back and forth going on, and then you would be able to like massage things back on track. And by doing that, you're able to like really acknowledge what had just happened, which is that great immersive moment that we all crave whenever we go to these experiences.
And that's another branch on the verisimilitude tree.
Yeah. So how do you control audience voice without a rule? Like if you want people to be able to talk, how do you do this without saying, You start with presence and body language. That's the best deterrent that I can think of, is just by creating this scene implies no talking. But if they still don't get that memo, we look at verbal recognition. And again, we dig deeper into the given circumstances. This is the last thing that they kind of expect you to do, is to answer in character to their out-of-character remark. But if verbal recognition still doesn't work, then you just gotta move on. You just gotta admit, we need to get through this thing together. I'm sorry you don't like it. And that's just kind of like our attitude in general. But we think it's pretty valuable, because when you are in a situation where there are multiple audience members, where maybe they don't know each other, other people's shows are at stake. If you're looking at one jackass, But all 7 of his friends are phenomenal human beings, so open, so ready for this experience. You gotta shut down the jackass.
Now, this is not a high percentage occurrence.
No, it's
but
not.
It is something that you really have to be prepared for.
Yeah, exactly. I think, I don't know, like 5 to 10%, something like that. Also think about like adjusting your questions if you're not getting the kind of responses from the questions that you want. I had a question early on that was, can you keep a secret? Heckles. So many heckles, you know?
Jokes.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you know, Sarah is such a gossip. She can't keep a secret. She's lying to you. No. Then we changed the question to, I will need you to keep a secret. Will you do that for me? And now you're looking from a character is asking something, there's a connection there, very serious in tone, completely changed the response. So our takeaway for this is, think carefully if you want to allow audience voice or not. There are a number of different stories and structures where they're going to go better if you deprive them of their voice. It does lead to a deeper connection, of course, but it does open yourself up to self-consciousness again, and some smart-ass behaviors from your audience. And then, of course, your actors will need to be seasoned warriors at handling the sort of audience pushback. So we cast for presence. That's the #1 thing that we look for in our actors, is do you have a presence that makes me want to pay attention to you without becoming a school marm?
And we rehearse at various levels of pushback as well.
Yeah, and also like you just got to memorize backwards and forwards because you will be interrupted and then you will need to come back on track.
Now we have, as I mentioned before, a fairly tech-heavy show, and we believed that we would use this to focus attention. And how did we do? I'm going to give that a kinda. This is a similar problem to paying attention to actors versus puzzles. Paying attention to lighting versus puzzles has the same issue. So if you are at a bottleneck, people might notice the light flashing that's highlighting an object in the corner. But if they're looking for numbers under a chair, they're never going to see that.
There are never numbers under the chairs.
So this is, you know, sort of the same thing. You can get people's attention with noises and with lights if you really dial it up past the point that you're really comfortable with aesthetically. We have noises that go off to try to get your attention. We have flashing lights to try to highlight things you should be looking at. And I put in something that I thought would work, and then I had to turn it up, and then I had to turn it up again. So just be prepared for that, and you might have to sacrifice taste sometimes if you really want to get attention with this sort of thing. Blackouts with, you know, a full blackout with the spotlight is generally going to work fairly well. It's not 100% even.
The one-on-one is just another scene. So when we approached writing this, it was just another scene for one person. It wasn't going to require a different kind of style. We were just going to be able to continue telling the story as we have been telling the story. Not so much. It turns out that a one-on-one functions very, very differently. This is a publicity photograph idea that we tried out. We didn't like it. We felt like it was a very silent film, kind of over-the-top melodrama in tone. I'm including it here on this slide because this is pretty much my face during my first couple of one-on-ones. I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. You are coming on so strong. It was kind of terrifying. So what's fascinating about this is that our one-on-one failed even the very first time we tried it. But we have very particular context for our one-on-one, so take this with a grain of salt. You are looking at pulling out a player from their team. So you're literally, you don't expect it. You're plucking them from the people that they have been with this entire time and isolating them. And we were like, this is going to be a great hero moment. But really, they feel kind of like a fish out of water. They're also coming, the one-on-one happens in Act 4. So they're coming from the very deep 60 minutes of gameplay that we give them. And then there's this little extra thing that they just totally weren't expecting. So they're very much so still in puzzle mode where they feel like they have the reins. And also, they don't even know that something else is going on for the team in the room that they just left. We give the people who are not in the one-on-one other things to do. so that they're not left alone. But of course, the person that you pulled doesn't know that. So they're kind of eager to come back to their team as soon as possible with like the solution. So we did some different things to make it work better. The number one thing that we learned was, I kind of took some pages from those that we've been to ourselves. In Sleep No More, they start their one-on-ones really, really aggressive. So that's how we decided to start this, is like make sure it's very clear, Daphne's in charge now, I have the reins, you don't. So just come and follow. We also decided that we could only show vulnerability after you establish trust, because this character is in a vulnerable spot. But if you don't have somebody where you really feel like they're not going to run away from you, there's this whole level of blocking that you just don't unlock unless you establish trust deeper on in the scene. We also changed some lines that suggested a puzzle direction. So iterating script is really, really important. Pay attention to how people are interpreting different things.
Yeah, anything she said that would clue people that there might be a puzzle, we would cut or change. There was a few of those that we slowly discovered because different people have different triggers.
And we also thought that the audience, we wanted to actually have the team self-select the person who was going to go and talk to Daphne. We thought that it would be great for like somebody to select and volunteer for a hero moment. And we imagined like all these people, jostling each other to like get the one-on-one, because that's the context we're used to. No. It's
really kind of the opposite.
Yeah, they really jostle each other to not go. They really aren't interested. So we learned pretty quickly that the actor knows best. The actor should always have the right to choose who they take. They will have that kind of gut instinct. Do I trust this person? Do I not trust this person? And you will be able to know who's going to receive it best, who's going to get the most out of it. So I really believe that the actor should be the one choosing that.
And now that's the end of our selected set of hypotheses. But we have one more thing, the surprise hypothesis, which is really our overarching one, that game and theater will work together for a complete experience. And we believe it's true.
Yeah, yeah, we do. We believe it.
We have lots of really happy teams, people that have never been to live theater before, but are just thrilled with, like live theater at all, like in a stage. Like this is the first live acting they've ever seen.
You don't see in Houston. They're coming out, they want to come for their birthday, they want to dress up in 1920s apparel, and they're coming in part for the game. They know that they are going for an experience with their friends. The kind of activity that we are offering them is a unique one. I kind of call it like you're in the bragging zone, this kind of immersive theater. When you're playing a game, like you make a difference when you show up. And it's also taking storytelling onto a personal level, too. It's not just something that you watch. It's something that you get involved in. I also feel like the first time I went to Sleep No More, I really wanted to help the characters. It like broke my heart when I realized I couldn't save Lady Macduff from her addiction. So when I went to, so it's perhaps not surprising that in my first immersive production, you get the chance to save people. And make that difference. I will say there is a bit of a drawback to consider when you bring game and storytelling together. Your immersive theater verisimilitude becomes your escape room red herring. So like all those lovely details that you think like make your world rich and real and engaging and believable become false trails for the players. So we kind of had to decide what did we value most. And it was a little bit of a balancing act. We still have some things here and there that are designed specifically to make the world feel more realistic and don't take players too far off. But we do have a lot of things that we cut. We just couldn't do it. We couldn't afford the players going down the wrong path.
But the real trick is to make all the elements of the game detail and important to the story.
Yes.
You just, instead of having decoration, you have to have Chekhov's gun everywhere. Pretty much everything has to have some identifiable use, or it may become a problem in a game context. But also, on the game side, it really seems to improve it. We're very well regarded in the escape room world. We were recently voted number 3 amongst all escape rooms, and have won a wide variety of awards. But what we really like is that it gives context to the game. A lot of escape rooms, I think, ratchet up the story to try to make it feel important. You're saving the world, or you're saving yourself from a dire situation. The escape room stakes are too damn high. You don't believe that you're about to be exploded along with the rest of the city. It's hard to believe. But with a live cast, with actors, you can tell a smaller story where you're saving someone else with their personal problems. It gives a human dimension to the thing that we really love. So a few takeaways from sort of the broader concept. If you're doing a game or you're giving people any sort of activity to do, make sure they're rewarded for it. In an escape room, the reward for doing something is more game, which is good. But we can also give you more story. We can give you more interaction. So if you have something that you're asking people to do that's challenging, make sure they get some reward at the end of it, even if it's just a piece of candy or something.
Eye contact is magic.
Yeah, Haley talks about that all the time. Just, look at me, acknowledge my existence. Like that's an immersive theater sort of staple that is what you can get there. Also, we really recommend that if you're integrating game and anything else, or anything and anything else, why not, that you do them both at the same time. If you develop things in different silos, you're going to have a hard time melding them together. But in our case, the story was developed along with the game. The things that you do as puzzles were really important. They came from the life of Houdini. And we also invented things for the life of Houdini and about Daphne, all together at the same time. And I've gone through the exercise of trying to write our game as a 10-minute play or something. And I just found it to be impossible because it just doesn't make any sense without the players in the room making the story work.
Yeah, just to wrap up, if you are ever in Houston, please come and see us. We're very excited to be sharing the next step in escape rooms, as it were. Buy a plane ticket, we'll buy you a drink. And if you can't, please do check out Immersology.com. You'll find quite often the things that we are learning, we post up there. And we just want to present, too, that these are just rules, essentially. Or no, they're not rules, they're just results. And again, they tie back to our personal philosophy, which is we wanted to make sure that everybody came out with the same high-quality experience across the board. Maybe you're not doing that. So please take this with the idea that these are not rules. You can do anything. You could probably do an escape room with an actor, with storytelling that is successful, that doesn't follow our structure. I think that's entirely possible. What are some games that we can think of that would be less frantic than an escape room and wouldn't cause escape room brain damage? What are some ways that we can tell story through game that doesn't involve immersive theater?
We're thinking about a few of those. That might be our third experience.
Yeah.
And we'd love to hear if you have ideas. Maybe they can inform what we'll do in the future.
So come and find us. Talk to us about what are your results? How is your audience behaving? This is the kind of stuff that we really geek out on. And when your theories completely fail, that's when things get really interesting.
And in the long run, if you care to join us in the immersive theater / escape room world, we'd really love to have some more company.
Just keep in mind, escape rooms are hard.
Escape rooms are hard, yes.
Yeah, and thanks so much. I think we have like 30 seconds for questions. So.